across it. My hip, it shouldn't fly away from it, but it should steadily be moving away from that as I'm shifting forward and turning. Notice if I just turn my hips, it's moving away from it. If I just shift, it moves away from it. So what is he doing in that model? He's shifting and turning. So my right quad, my right knee, and all that are turning forward. My hip is turning towards the target. So if you have trouble with that, you keep the hip inside the noodle going back, and then slowly working away all the way towards the target. Right hip inside the noodle, then slowly away. How the right hip works, if we're talking general golf swing stuff. One of them is during the backswing, one of them during the downswing. Now, we're gonna put a couple of videos on the screen here of models that you can see, and a couple pictures here to show these things. The first macro thing, if we're building a good golf swing with the right hip, would be what it does during the backswing. Now I've got this little noodle here that Don Law from Osprey Point gave me, but if we were to imagine a line up and down the right hip, and you put a line on the right hip of a golfer, the better golfers, their right hip never moves right of that line, or they would never bump into the noodle. Higher handicaps, if we put a spectrum across of 1,000, they would be the most likely to bump into that to the right. Their hips shift right, they don't turn. That moves their low point back behind the ball for fats and thins. It also makes their swing direction more across it for pulls and slices. The best ball strikers, their right hip stays inside of that line. In fact, right away from the top, typically their hip will stay on the line pretty early, but from about halfway back to the top, their hip starts to actually go inside that line. And that comes from their hips turning. So if we measure my hips from the face-on angle from here, I don't have like childbearing hips, but I have, I don't know, a foot or so, right, from this side. Now from the back angle, you can see my hips are much more narrow. So from this angle, they're much more narrow. From this angle, they're wide. So what does that make sense? Well, if I turn, you're going from seeing my hips from this angle to that angle. So obviously, that's going to go inside of that line. That happens from turning. So key point number one, have an object on your right hip. Your right hip should never move right of that. It should stay inside of that. It's okay if it stays on it early, but from the setup to the top, it should work inside of that line. That would be point number one. That helps me turn my hips enough during the backswing so I can turn my chest and shoulders enough so I can get enough depth and swing the club far enough to swing from inside. So more draws, more power. Now, as my right hip stays inside of this, my hips don't turn level. So my hips don't turn, my setup position, let's say my right hip and left hip are the same height. When I go back, my right hip and left hip are no longer the same height. My right hip is higher than my left hip. And that happens from my legs changing flex. So when I go back, my right leg straightens some, my left leg bends some, so my right hip is higher. So just to put that together, in the backswing, macro move number one, my right hip goes up and back, up and back. So it's up and around me, or up and back. So it moves farther away from this noodle and a little bit up towards the sky. It gives me a little bit of hip tilt. So up and back with my right hip inside the noodle. That would be macro move number one. Now, in the demonstration you can see from face on with the Adam Scott, if we look at that line from the top, the right hip moves inside the noodle and it's higher than the left. That right hip is moving away from the noodle farther and farther and farther, slowly but gradually, all the way to and through impact, to the point where at the finish position, the right hip gets even with the left and it's over my ankle. That's what I would call point number two. So the right hip goes up and back. The right hip, as I start down, evens out, so it gets even with my left hip, about halfway down. From there, my right hip's lower than my left and working away from this noodle the whole time at impact. Right hip still lower through impact. And then when I get all the way done, even with my left and about the same height. So macro piece number one was up and back inside the noodle. Macro piece number two would be just put a club across your hips and get them all the way to the target. The stick should be over your ankle and the right hip should be even with the left. Not back here with the right hip behind. You don't need to go excessive with the right hip through. You want them to be about even and right over your ankle like you'll see in the picture. So I have two easy checkpoints here. Would be a noodle I can check this, keep my right hip up and back inside of that, and then I can check my finish position. And from there, I want to see what? I want to check and see, okay, is my right hip even with my left fully over my ankle? That means that my hips have worked correctly both on the way back. It's turned and tilted. My right hip steadily moving away from this noodle. That can be another checkpoint. If you're someone who hangs back too far on your right side, your right hip shouldn't stay on this back here. That's going to move my low point back and swing across it. My hip, it shouldn't fly away from it, but it should steadily be moving away from that as I'm shifting forward and turning. Notice if I just turn my hips, it's moving away from it. If I just shift, it moves away from it. So what is he doing in that model? He's shifting and turning. So my right quad, my right knee, and all that are turning forward. My hip is turning towards the target. So if you have trouble with that, you keep the hip inside the noodle going back and then slowly working away all the way towards the target. Right hip inside the noodle, then slowly away. All the way through. I really like that feel. So, Robert, that's how the right hip works. Those would be the two drills I would work on in terms of the backswing. Keeping it inside of here is really the most important piece. It's going to be a little higher than your left from your legs changing flex. Your right hip and left hip even out about halfway down. Your right hips then lower all the way to and through impact, and then get them back over. If you guys enjoyed this video, we're going to put a card on the screen for a similar style video. If you want to have your question answered, leave a comment down below. We really appreciate you guys sending in all the videos, all the questions rather, for us to do videos like this. Would love to continue answering your questions. We know you have questions, we have answers.